The Owl and the Pussycat by Edward Lear. From Junior Classics, Volume 10, Part 1. Poems Old and New. Read for LibriVox.org by Craig Franklin. The Owl and the Pussycat went to sea in a beautiful pea-green boat. They took some honey and plenty of money wrapped up in a £5 note. The Owl looked up to the moon above and sang to a small guitar. "Oh, lovely pussy, oh, pussy, my love, what a beautiful pussy you are, you are, you are. What a beautiful pussy you are." Pussy said to the Owl, "You elegant fowl, how charmingly sweet you sing. Oh, let us be married, too long we have tarried. But what shall we do for a ring?" They sailed away for a year and a day to the land where the bong tree grows, and there in a wood a piggy-wig stood, with a ring at the end of his nose, his nose, his nose, with a ring at the end of his nose. "Dear pig, are you willing to sell for 1 shilling your ring?" Said the piggy, "I will." So they took it away and were married next day by the turkey who lives on the hill. They dined upon mince and slices of quince, which they ate with a runcible spoon, and hand in hand on the edge of the sand they danced by the light of the moon, the moon, the moon. They danced by the light of the moon. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Foreign Children by Robert Louis Stevenson. From the Junior Classics, Volume 10. Poems Old and New. Read for LibriVox.org by Dale Grothmann. Little Indian, Sioux or Crow, little frosty Eskimo, little Turk or Japanee, oh, don't you wish that you were me? You have seen the scarlet trees and the lions overseas. You have eaten ostrich eggs and turned the turtles off their legs. Such a life is very fine, but it's not so nice as mine. You must often, as you trod, have wearied not to be abroad. You have curious things to eat. I am fed on proper meat. You must dwell beyond the foam, but I am safe and live at home. Little Indian, Sioux or Crow, little frosty Eskimo, little Turk or Japanee, oh, don't you wish that you were me? End of Foreign Children by Robert Louis Stevenson. This recording is in the public domain.
A Visit from St. Nicholas by Clement C. Moore. From the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Part 1. Poems Old and New. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mamma in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap, when out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave a lustre of midday to objects below, when what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. With a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles as coursers they came, and he whistled and he shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donder and Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky, so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled! His dimples, how merry! His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Three Kings of Orient by J.H. Hopkins, from Junior Classics, Volume 10, Poems Old and New, read for LibriVox.org. We three kings of Orient are, bearing gifts we traverse far, field and fountain, moor and mountain, following yonder star. Born a babe on Bethlehem plain, gold we bring to crown him again, king forever, ceasing never, over us all to reign. Frankincense to offer have I, incense earns a deity nigh. Prayer and praising, all men raising, worship him, God on high. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain, and the reader was Desmond.
Bed in Summer by Robert Louis Stevenson, from the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Poems Old and New, read for LibriVox.org by Dale Grothmann. In the winter I get up at night and dress by yellow candlelight. In summer, quite the other way, I have to go to bed by day. I have to go to bed and see the birds still hopping on the tree, or hear the grown-up people's feet still going past me in the street. And does it not seem hard to you when all the sky is clear and blue, and I should like so much to play, to have to go to bed by day? End of Bed in Summer by Robert Louis Stevenson. This recording is in the public domain. My Bed is a Boat by Robert Louis Stevenson, from the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Poems Old and New, read for LibriVox.org by Dale Grothmann. My bed is like a little boat. Nurse helps me when I embark. She girds me in my sailor's coat and starts me in the dark. At night I go on board and say good night to all my friends on shore. I shut my eyes and sail away, and see and hear no more. And sometimes things to bed I take, as prudent sailors have to do. Perhaps a slice of wedding cake, perhaps a toy or two. All night across the dark we steer, but when the day returns at last, safe in my room beside the pier, I find my vessel fast. End of My Bed is a Boat by Robert Louis Stevenson. This recording is in the public domain.
The Walrus and the Carpenter by Lewis Carroll, from the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Part 1. Poems Old and New, read for LibriVox.org. The sun was shining on the sea, shining with all his might. He did his very best to make the billows smooth and bright. and this was odd, because it was the middle of the night. The moon was shining sulkily, because she thought the sun had got no business to be there after the day was done. "It's very rude of him," she said, "to come and spoil the fun." The sea was wet as wet could be. The sands were dry as dry. You could not see a cloud because no cloud was in the sky. No birds were flying overhead. There were no birds to fly. The Walrus and the Carpenter were walking close at hand. They wept like anything to see such quantities of sand. If this were only cleared away, they said, it would be grand. If 7 maids with 7 mops swept it up for half a year, do you suppose, the Walrus said, that they could get it clear? "I doubt it," said the Carpenter, and shed a bitter tear. "Oh, oysters, come and walk with us," the Walrus did beseech. "A pleasant walk, a pleasant talk, along the briny beach. We cannot do with more than 4, to give a hand to each." The eldest oyster looked at him, but never a word he said. The eldest oyster winked his eye and shook his heavy head, meaning to say he did not choose to leave the oyster bed. But 4 young oysters hurried up, all eager for the treat. Their coats were brushed, their faces washed, their shoes were clean and neat. And this was odd, because, they hadn't any feet. 4 other oysters followed them, and yet another 4. And thick and fast they came at last, and more and more and more, all hopping through the frothy waves and scrambling to the shore. The Walrus and the Carpenter walked on a mile or so, and then they rested on a rock, conveniently low, and all the little oysters stood and waited in a row. "The time has come," the Walrus said, "to talk of many things, of shoes and ships and sealing wax, of cabbages and kings, and why the sea is boiling hot, and whether pigs have wings." "But wait a bit," the oysters cried, "before we have our chat, for some of us are out of breath, and all of us are fat." "No hurry," said the Carpenter. They thanked him much for that. "A loaf of bread," the Walrus said, "is what we chiefly need. Pepper and vinegar besides are very good indeed. Now if you're ready, oysters dear, we can begin to feed." "But not on us," the oysters cried, turning a little blue. "After such kindness, that would be a dismal thing to do." "The night is fine," the Walrus said. "Do you admire the view?" "It was so kind of you to come, and you are very nice." The Carpenter said nothing, but cut us another slice. "I wish you were not quite so deaf. I've had to ask you twice." "It seems a shame," the Walrus said, "to play them such a trick, after we've brought them out so far and made them trot so quick." The Carpenter said nothing, but the butters spread too thick. "I weep for you," the Walrus said. "I deeply sympathize." With sobs and tears he sorted out those of the largest size, holding his pocket handkerchief before his streaming eyes. "Oh, oysters," said the Carpenter, "you've had a pleasant run. Shall we be trotting home again?" But answer came there none. And this was scarcely odd, because they'd eaten every one. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Table and the Chair by Edward Lear. From the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Poems Old and New. Read for LibriVox.org by Dale Grothmann. The Table and the Chair by Edward Lear. Said the table to the chair, "You can hardly be aware how I suffer from the heat, and from chilblains on my feet. If we took a little walk, we might have a little talk. Pray, let us take the air," said the table to the chair. Said the chair unto the table, "Now you know we are not able. How foolishly you talk! when you know we cannot walk?" Said the table with a sigh, "It can do no harm to try. I've as many legs as you. Why can't we walk on two?" So they both went slowly down and walked about the town, with a cheerful, bumpy sound, as they toddled round and round. And everybody cried, as they hastened to their side, "See, the table and the chair have come out to take the air." But in going down an alley to the castle in the valley, they completely lost their way and wandered all the day, till, to see them safely back, they paid a ducky quack, and a beetle and a mouse, who took them to their house. Then they whispered to each other, "Oh, delightful little brother, what a lovely walk we've taken! Let us dine on beans and bacon." So the ducky and the leetle browny mousie and the beetle dined and danced upon their heads, till they toddled to their beds. End of The Table and the Chair, by Edward Lear. This recording is in the public domain. A Good Play by Robert Louis Stevenson, from the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Poems, Old and New, read for LibriVox.org by Dale Grothmann. We built a ship upon the stairs, all made from the back bedroom chairs, and filled it full of sofa pillows, to go a-sailing on the billows. We took a saw and several nails, and water in the nursery pails, and Tom said, "Let us also take an apple and a slice of cake," which was enough for Tom and me to go a-sailing on till tea. We sailed along for days and days, and had the very best of plays, but Tom fell out and hurt his knee, so there was no one left but me. The end of A Good Play by Robert Louis Stevenson. This recording is in the public domain.
God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen, by Dinah Maria Mullock, from the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Part 1, Poems, Old and New, read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. God rest ye, merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay, for Jesus Christ our Saviour was born on Christmas Day. The dawn rose red o'er Bethlehem, the stars shone through the gray, when Jesus Christ our Saviour was born on Christmas Day. God rest ye, little children, let nothing you affright, for Jesus Christ your Saviour was born this happy night. Along the hills of Galilee the white flock sleeping lay, when Christ the child of Nazareth was born on Christmas Day. God rest ye, all good Christians, upon this blessed morn. The Lord of all good Christians was of a woman born. Now all your sorrows he doth heal, your sins he takes away, for Jesus Christ our Saviour was born on Christmas Day. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Lobster-Quadrille by Lewis Carroll, from the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Part 1, Poems, Old and New, read for LibriVox.org. "Will you walk a little faster?" said a whiting to a snail. "There's a porpoise close behind us, and he's treading on my tail. See how eagerly the lobsters and the turtles all advance. They are waiting on the shingle. Will you come and join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, will you join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you join the dance? You can really have no notion how delightful it will be when they take us up and throw us with the lobsters out to sea." But the snail replied, too far, and gave a look askance. Said he thanked the whiting kindly, but he would not join the dance. Would not, could not, would not, could not, would not join the dance. Would not, could not, would not, could not join the dance. What matters it how far we go? His scaly friend replied, "There is another shore, you know, upon the other side. The further off from England, the nearer is to France. Then turn not pale, beloved snail, but come and join the dance. Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, will you join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you join the dance?" End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Young Dandelion by Dinah Marie Moloch, from the Junior Classics Volume 10, Part 1, Poems Old and New, read for LibriVox.org. Young Dandelion on a hedge side, said young Dandelion, "Who'll be my bride? I'm a bold fellow as ever was seen, with my shield of yellow in the grass green. You may uproot me from field and from lane, trample me, cut me, I spring up again. I never flinch, sir, wherever I dwell. Give me an inch, sir, I'll soon take an ell. Drive me from garden in anger and pride, I'll thrive and harden by the roadside. Not a bit fearful, showing my face, always so cheerful in every place. Said young Dandelion with a sweet air, I have my eye on Miss Daisy fair. Though we may tarry till past the cold, her I will marry ere I grow old. I will protect her from all kinds of harm, feed her with nectar, shelter her warm. Whatever the weather, let it go by, we'll hold together, Daisy and I. I'll never give in, no, nothing I fear. All that I win, oh, I'll keep for my dear. Said young Dandelion on his hedge side, Who'll me rely on? Who'll be my bride? End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
John Gilpin by William Cooper, from the Junior Classics Volume 10, Part 1, Poems Old and New, read for LibriVox.org by Craig Franklin. John Gilpin was a citizen of credit and renown, a train band captain eke was he of famous London town. John Gilpin Spice said to her dear, Though wedded we have been these twice 10 tedious years, yet we no holiday have seen. To-morrow is our wedding day, and we will then repair unto the Bell at Edmonton, all in a chaise and pair. My sister and my sister's child, myself and children 3, will fill the chaise, so you must ride on horseback after we. He soon replied, I do admire of womankind but one, and you are she, my dearest dear, therefore it shall be done. I am a linen draper bold, as all the world doth know, and my good friend, the calendar, will lend his horse to go. Quoth Mistress Gilpin, That's well said, and for that wine is dear, we will be furnished with our own, which is both bright and clear. John Gilpin kissed his loving wife. O'erjoyed was he to find that though on pleasure she was bent, she had a frugal mind. The morning came, the chaise was brought, but yet was not allowed to drive up to the door, lest all should say that she was proud. So 3 doors off the chaise was stayed, where they did all get in, 6 precious souls, and all agog to dash through thick and thin. Smack went the whip, round went the wheels, were never folk so glad. The stones did rattle underneath us, if Cheapside were mad. John Gilpin at his horse's side seized fast the flowing mane, and up he got in haste to ride, but soon came down again. For saddle tree scarce reached had he his journey to begin, when turning round his head he saw 3 customers come in. So down he came for loss of time, although it grieved him sore, yet loss of pence full well he knew would trouble him much more. 'Twas long before the customers were suited to their mind, when Betty, screaming, came downstairs, The wine is left behind. Good lack, quoth he, yet bring it me, my leathern belt likewise, in which I bear my trusty sword when I do exercise. Now Mistress Gilpin, careful soul, had 2 stone bottles found, to hold the liquor that she loved and keep it safe and sound. Each bottle had a curling ear, through which the belt he drew, and hung a bottle on each side to make his balance true. Then over all, that he might be equipped from top to toe, his long red cloak, well brushed and neat, he manfully did throw. Now see him mounted once again upon his nimble steed, full slowly pacing o'er the stones with caution and good heed. But finding soon a smoother road beneath his well-shod feet, the snorting beast began to trot, which galled him in his seat. So, fair and softly, John he cried, but John he cried in vain. That trot became a gallop soon, in spite of curb and rein. So stooping down, as needs he must, who cannot sit upright, he grasped the mane with both his hands, and eke with all his might. His horse, who never in that sort had handled been before, what thing upon his back had got, did wonder more and more. Away went Gilpin, neck or nought, away went hat and wig. He little dreamt when he set out of running such a rig. The wind did blow, the cloak did fly, like steam along and gay, till loop and button, failing both, at last it flew away. Then might all people well discern the bottles he had slung, a bottle swinging at each side, as hath been said or sung. The dogs did bark, the children screamed, up flew the windows all, and every soul cried out, "Well done!" as loud as he could bawl. Away went Gilpin, who but he, his fame soon spread around. He carries weight, he rides a race, 'tis for £1,000. And still, as fast as he drew near, 'twas wonderful to view how in a trice the turnpike men their gates wide open threw. And now, as he went bowing down, his reeking head full low, the bottles twain behind his back were shattered at a blow. Down ran the wine into the road, most piteous to be seen, which made his horse's flanks to smoke as they had basted been. But still he seemed to carry weight, with leathern girdle braced, for all might see the bottle neck still dangling at his waist. Thus all through merry Islington these gambols he did play, until he came unto the wash of Edmonton so gay. And there he threw the wash about on both sides of the way, just like unto a trundling mop or a wild goose at play. At Edmonton his loving wife from the balcony spied her tender husband, wondering much to see how he did ride. "Stop, stop, John Gilpin, here's the house," they all at once did cry. "The dinner waits, and we are tired." Said Gilpin, "So am I." But yet his horse was not a whit inclined to tarry there, for why, his owner had a house full 10 miles off at Ware. So like an arrow swift he flew, shot by an archer strong, so did he fly, which brings me to the middle of my song. Away went Gilpin out of breath and sore against his will, till at his friend the calendar's his horse at last stood still. The calendar, amazed to see his neighbour in such trim, laid down his pipe, flew to the gate, and thus accosted him. "What news? What news? Your tidings tell me you must and shall. Say why bareheaded you are come, or why you come at all." Now Gilpin had a pleasant wit, and loved a timely joke, and thus unto the calendar in merry guise he spoke. "I came because your horse would come, and if I well forebode, my hat and wig will soon be here, they are upon the road." The calendar, right glad to find his friend in merry pin, returned him not a single word, but to the house went in. When straight he came with hat and wig, a wig that flowed behind, a hat not much the worse for wear, each comely in its kind. He held them up, and in his turn thus showed his ready wit. "My head is twice as big as yours, they therefore needs must fit. But let me scrape the dirt away that hangs upon your face, and stop and eat, for well you may be in a hungry case." said John, "it is my wedding day, and all the world would stare if wife should dine at Edmonton, I should dine at Ware." So turning to his horse, he said, "I am in haste to dine. 'Twas for your pleasure you came here. You shall go back for mine." Ah, luckless speech and bootless boast, for which he paid full dear, for while he spake, a braying ass did sing most loud and clear. Whereat his horse did snort as he had heard a lion roar, and galloped off with all his might, as he had done before. Away went Gilpin, and away went Gilpin's hat and wig. He lost them sooner than at first, for why, they were too big. Now Mistress Gilpin, when she saw her husband posting down into the country far away, she pulled out half a crown, and thus unto the youth she said, that drove them to the bell, "This shall be yours when you bring back my husband safe and well." The youth did ride, and soon did meet John coming back amain, whom in a trice he tried to stop by catching at his rein, but not performing what he meant, and gladly would have done, the frightened steed he frightened more, and made him faster run. Away went Gilpin, and away went postboy at his heels, the postboy's horse right glad to miss the lumbering of the wheels. 6 gentlemen upon the road, thus seeing Gilpin fly, with postboy scampering in the rear, they raised the hue and cry. Stop thief, a highwayman!" Not one of them was mute, and all and each that passed that way did join in the pursuit. And now the turnpike gates again flew open in short space, the tollmen thinking, as before, that Gilpin rode a race. And so he did, and won it too, for he got first to town, nor stopped till where he had got up, he did again get down. Now let us sing, "Long live the King," and Gilpin, long live he, and when he next doth ride abroad, may I be there to see. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Flowers by Robert Louis Stevenson. From the Junior Classics, Volume 10. Poems, Old and New. Read for LibriVox.org by Dale Grothmann. All the names I know from nurse, gardener's garters, shepherd's purse, bachelor's buttons, lady's smock, and the lady hollyhock. Fairy places, fairy things, fairy woods where the wild bee wings, tiny trees for tiny dames, these must all be fairy names. Tiny woods below these boughs shady fairies weave a house, tiny tree-tops, rose or thyme, where the braver fairies climb. Fair are grown-up people's trees, but the fairest woods are these, where, if I were not so tall, I should live for good and all. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Duel by Eugene Field. From the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Part 1, Poems, Old and New. Read for LibriVox.org by Dale Grothmann. The gingham dog and the calico cat side by side on the table sat. 'Twas 12:30, and what do you think? Nor one nor t'other had slept a wink. The old Dutch clock and the Chinese plate appeared to know, as sure as fate, there was going to be a terrible spat. I wasn't there. I simply state what was told to me by the Chinese plate. The gingham dog went bow wow wow, and the calico cat replied meow. The air was littered an hour or so with bits of gingham and calico, while the old Dutch clock in the chimney place up with its hands before its face, for it always dreaded a family row. Now mind, I'm only telling you what the old Dutch clock declares is true. The Chinese plate looked very blue, and wailed, "Oh dear, what shall we do?" But the gingham dog and the calico cat wallowed this way and tumbled that, employing every tooth and claw in the awfulest way you ever saw. And oh, how the gingham and calico flew! Don't fancy I exaggerate, I got my news from the Chinese plate. The next morning, where the two had sat, they found no trace of dog or cat. And some folks think unto this day that burglars stole that pair away. But the truth about the cat and pup is this: they ate each other up. Now, what do you really think of that? The old Dutch clock, it told me so, and that is how I came to know. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Little Orphan Annie by James Whitcomb Riley. From the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Poems, Old and New. Read for LibriVox.org by Dale Grothmann. Little Orphan Annie's come to our house to stay, and wash the cups and saucers up, and brush the crumbs away, and shoo the chickens off the porch, and dust the hearth, and sweep, and make the fire, and bake the bread, and earn her board and keep. And all us other children, when supper things is done, we set around the kitchen fire, and has the mostest fun, a-listening to the witch tales that Annie tells about, and the gobelins'll get you if you don't watch out. Once there was a little boy who wouldn't say his prayers, so when he went to bed at night, away up the stairs, his mammy heard him holler, and his daddy heard him bawl, and when they turned the kivers down, he wasn't there at all. And they seeked him in the rafter room, and cubby hole, and press, and seeked him up the chimbley flue, and everywheres, I guess. But all they ever found was this his pants and roundabout, and the gobelins'll get you if you don't watch out. And one time a little girl, and allus laugh and grin, and make fun of everyone, and all her blood and kin. And onct, when they was company, and old folks was there, she mocked 'em and shocked 'em, and said she didn't care. And this as she kicked her heels, and turned to run and hide, there was two great big black things a-standing by her side, and they snatched her through the ceiling, for she knowed what she's about, and the gobelins'll get you if you don't watch out. And little Orphan Annie says, when the blaze is blue, and the lamp wick sputters, and the wind goes woo-woo, and you hear the crickets quit, and the moon is gray, and the lightning bugs in dew is all squinched away, you'd better mind your parents and your teachers fond and dear, and cherish them 'at loves you, and dry the orphan's tear, and help the poor and needy ones that clusters all about, ere the gobelins'll get you if you don't watch out. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Ready for Duty by Anna B. Warner. From the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Part 1, Poems Old and New. Read for LibriVox.org. Daffy-down-dilly came up in the cold, through the brown mold, although the March breezes blew keen on her face, although the white snow lay on many a place. Daffy-down-dilly had heard underground the sweet rushing sound of the streams as they burst off their white winter chains, of the whistling spring winds and the pattering rains. Now then, thought Daffy, deep down in her heart, it's time I should start. So she pushed her soft leaves through the hard frozen ground, quite up to the surface, and then she looked round. There was snow all about her, gray clouds overhead. The trees all looked dead. Then how do you think Daffy-down-dilly felt when the sun would not shine and the ice would not melt. Cold weather, thought Daffy, still working away. The earth's hard today. There's but a half-inch of my leaves to be seen, and 2/3 of that is more yellow than green. I can't do much yet, but I'll do what I can. It's well I began. For unless I can manage to lift up my head, the people will think that Spring herself's dead. So little by little she brought her leaves out, all clustered about, and then her bright flowers began to unfold, till Daffy stood robed in her spring green and gold. Oh, Daffy-down-Dilly, so brave and so true, I wish all were like you, so ready for duty in all sorts of weather, and showing forth courage and beauty together. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Thanatopsis by William Cullen Bryant. From the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Part 1, Poems Old and New. Read for LibriVox.org by Phil Schempf. To him who, in the love of nature, holds communion with her visible forms, she speaks a various language. For his gayer hours she has a voice of gladness and a smile, and eloquence of beauty, and she glides into his darker musings with a mild and gentle sympathy that steals away their sharpness ere he is aware. When thoughts of the last bitter hour come like a blight over thy spirit, and sad images of the stern agony and shroud and pall and breathless darkness and the narrow house make thee to shudder and grow sick at heart, go forth under the open sky, and list to nature's teachings, while from all around, earth and her waters and the depths of air, comes a still voice. Yet a few days, and thee the all-beholding sun shall see no more in all his course, nor yet in the cold ground, where thy pale form was laid with many tears, nor in the embrace of ocean, shall exist thy image. Earth that nourished thee shall claim thy growth to be resolved to earth again, and, lost each human trace, surrendering up thine individual being, shalt thou go to mix forever with the elements, to be a brother to the insensible rock and to the sluggish clod, which the rude swain turns with his share and treads upon. The oak shall send his roots abroad and pierce thy mould. Yet not to thine eternal resting place shalt thou retire alone, nor couldst thou wish couch more magnificent. Thou shalt lie down with patriarchs of the infant world, with kings, the powerful of the earth, the wise, the good, fair forms and hoary seers of ages past, all in one mighty sepulchre. The hills, rock-ribbed and ancient as the sun, the vales stretching in pensive quietness between, the venerable woods, rivers that move in majesty, and the complaining brooks that make the meadows green, and, poured round all, old ocean's grey and melancholy waste, are but the solemn decorations all of the great tomb of man. The golden sun, the planets, all the infinite host of heaven, are shining on the sad abodes of death through the still lapse of ages. All that tread the globe are but a handful to the tribes that slumber in its bosom. Take the wings of morning, traverse Barca's desert sands, or lose thyself in the continuous woods where rolls the Oregon, and hears no sound save his own dashings. Yet the dead are there, and millions in those solitudes, since first the flight of years began, have laid them down in their last sleep. The dead reign there alone. So shalt thou rest. And what if thou withdraw in silence from the living, and no friend take note of thy departure? All that breathe will share thy destiny. The gay will laugh when thou art gone. The solemn brood of care plod on, and each one, as before, will chase his favourite phantom. Yet all these shall leave their mirth and their employments, and shall come and make their bed with thee. As the long train of ages glide away, the sons of men, the youth in life's green spring, and he who goes in the full strength of years, matron and maid, and the sweet babe, and the gray-headed man, shall, one by one, be gathered to thy side, by those who in their turn shall follow them. So live, that when thy summon comes to join the innumerable caravan that moves to the pale realms of shade, where each shall take his chamber in the silent halls of death, thou go not, like the quarry slave at night, scourged to his dungeon, but sustained and soothed by an unfaltering trust. Approach thy grave like one who wraps the drapery of his couch about him and lies down to pleasant dreams. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Heaving of the Lead by Charles Dibdin. From the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Part 1, Poems Old and New, read for LibriVox.org. For England when with favouring gale our gallant ship up channel steered, and scudding under easy sail the high blue western land appeared. To heave the lead the seamen sprung, and to the pilot cheerily sung, "By the deep, 9!" And bearing up to gain the port, some well-known object kept in view, an abbey tower, a harbour fort, or beacon to the vessel true, while oft the lead the seamen flung, and to the pilot cheerily sung, "By the mark, 7!" And as the much-loved shore we near, with transport we behold the roof, where dwelt a friend or partner dear, of faith and love a matchless proof. The lead once more the seaman flung, and to the watchful pilot sung, "Quarter-less, 5!" Now to her berth the ship draws nigh, we shorten sail, she feels the tide. "Stand clear the cable," is the cry, the anchor's gone, we safely ride. The watch is set, and through the night we hear the seamen with delight proclaim, "All's well." Ended poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Morning by James Beatty from the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Poems Old and New, read for LibriVox.org. But who the melodies of morn can tell? The wild brook babbling down the mountainside, the lowing herd, the sheepfold's simple bell, the pipe of early shepherd dim descried in the lone valley echoing far and wide, the clamorous horn along the cliffs above, the hollow murmur of the ocean tide, the hum of bees, the linnet's lay of love, and the full choir that wakes the universal grove. The cottage curs at early pilgrim bark, crowned with her pail the tripping milkmaid sings. The whistling ploughman stalks afield, and hark! Down the rough slope the ponderous wagon rings, through rustling corn the hare astonished springs. Slow tolls the village clock the drowsy hour, the partridge bursts away on whirring wings. Deep mourns the turtle in sequestered bower, and shrill lark carols clear from her aerial tower. End of Morning by James Beatty. This recording is in the public domain. The Coral Grove by James G. Percival from the Junior Classics Volume 10, Poems Old and New, read for LibriVox.org. Deep in the wave is a coral grove, where the purple mullet and goldfish rove, where the sea flower spreads its leaves of blue that never are wet with falling dew, but in bright and changeful beauty shine, far down in the green and glassy brine. The floor is of sand like the mountain drift, and the pearl shells spangle the flinty snow. From coral rocks the sea plants lift their boughs where the tides and billows flow. The water is calm and still below, for the winds and waves are absent there, and the sands are bright as the stars that glow in the motionless fields of upper air. There, with its waving blade of green, the sea flag streams through the silent water, and the crimson leaf of the dulce is seen to blush like a banner bathed in slaughter. There with a light and easy motion the fan coral sweeps through the clear deep sea, and the yellow and scarlet tufts of ocean are blending like corn on the upland lea. And life in rare and beautiful forms is sporting amid these bowers of stone, and is safe when the wrathful spirit of storms has made the top of the wave his own, and when the ship from his fury flies where the myriad voices of ocean roar, when the wind god frowns in the murky skies, and demons are waiting the wreck on shore. Then far below in the peaceful sea, the purple mullet and goldfish rove, where the waters murmur tranquilly through the bending twigs of the coral grove. End of The Coral Grove by James G. Percival. This recording is in the public domain. The Jumblies by Edward Lear, from the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Poems Old and New, read for LibriVox.org. They went to sea in a sieve, they did. In a sieve they went to sea, in spite of all their friends could say. On a winter's morn, on a stormy day, in a sieve they went to sea. And when the sieve turned round, and everyone cried, "You'll all be drowned," they called aloud, "Our sieve ain't big, but we don't care a button, we don't care a fig, in a sieve we'll go to sea." Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. They sailed away in a sieve, they did. In a sieve they sailed so fast, with only a beautiful pea-green veil tied with a ribbon by way of a sail to a small tobacco pipe mast, and everyone said who saw them go, "Oh, won't they soon be upset, you know, for the sky is so dark and the voyage is long, and happen what may, it's extremely wrong in a sieve to sail so fast." Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. The water it soon came in, it did, the water it soon came in. So to keep them dry they wrapped their feet in a pinky paper all folded neat, and they fastened it down with a pin, and they passed the night in a crockery jar, and each of them said, "How wise we are! Though the sky be dark and the voyage long, yet we never can think we were rash or wrong, while round in our sieve we spin." Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. All night long they sailed away, and when the sun went down they whistled and warbled a moony song to the echoing sound of a coppery gong in the shade of the mountains brown. "Oh, Timballoo, how happy we are when we live in a sieve in a crockery jar, and all night long in a moonlight pale we sail away with a pea-green sail in the shade of the mountains brown." Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. They sailed to the western sea, they did, to a land all covered with trees, and they bought an owl and a useful cart, and a pound of rice and a cranberry tart, and a hive of silvery bees, and they bought a pig and some green jackdaws, and a lovely monkey with lollipop paws, and 40 bottles of ring-bo-ree, and no end of Stilton cheese. Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. And in 20 years they all came back, in 20 years or more, and everyone said, "How tall they've grown, for they've been to the lakes in the torrible zone, and the hills of the Chankly Bore, and they drank their health and gave them a feast of dumplings made of beautiful yeast, and everyone said, if we only live, we too will go to the sea in a sieve, to the hills of the Chankly Bore." Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. End of The Jumblies by Edward Lear. This recording is in the public domain. The Man in the Moon by James W. Riley, from the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Poems Old and New, read for LibriVox.org. Said the Raggedy Man on a hot afternoon, "My sakes, what a lot of mistakes some little folks makes on the man in the moon. But people that's been to see him like me and calls on him frequent and intimately might drop a few facts that would interest you clean through, if you want 'em to. Some actual facts that might interest you. Oh, the man in the moon has a crick in his back, wee whim, ain't you sorry for him, and a mole on his nose that is purple and black, and his eyes are so weak that they water and run if he dares to dream even he looks at the sun. So he just dreams of stars, as the doctors advise. My eyes, but isn't he wise to just dream of stars, as the doctors advise? And the man in the moon has a boil on his ear. Wee wing, what a singular thing, I know, but these facts are authentic, my dear. There's a boil on his ear and a corn on his chin. He calls it a dimple, but dimples stick in. Yet it might be a dimple turned over, you know. Wang ho! Why, certainly so. It might be a dimple turned over, you know. And the man in the moon has a rheumatic knee. Gee whiz, what a pity that is. And his toes have worked round where his heels ought to be. So whenever he wants to go north, he goes south, and comes back with porridge crumbs all round his mouth, and he brushes them off with the Japanese fan. Wing Wan, what a marvelous man, what a very remarkably marvelous man. And the man in the moon, sighed the Raggedy Man, gets so lonesome, you know, up there by hisself since creation began, that when I call on him and then come away, he grabs me and holds me and begs me to stay, till, well, if it wasn't for Jimmy come Jim, dad limb, I'd go partners with him. Just jump my job here and be partners with him. End of The Man in the Moon by James W. Riley. This recording is in the public domain. The Raggedy Man by James W. Riley, from the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Part 1, Poems Old and New, read for LibriVox.org. Oh, the Raggedy Man, he works for Pa, and he's the goodest man ever you saw. Comes to our house every day and waters the horses and feeds 'em hay, and he opens the shed, and we all just laugh when he drives out our little old wobbly calf. And then, if our hired girl says he can, he milks the cow for Elizabeth Ann. Ain't he an awful, kind, raggedy man? Raggedy, raggedy, raggedy man. Why, the Raggedy Man, he is so good, he splits the kindlin' and chops the wood. And then he spades in our garden, too, and does most things that boys can't do. He clumbed clean up in our big tree and shook a apple down fur me, and another and two for 'Lizabeth Ann, and other and two for the Raggedy Man. Ain't he a awful kind Raggedy Man? Raggedy, raggedy, raggedy man. And the Raggedy Man, he knows most rhymes and tells 'em if I be good sometimes. Knows 'bout giants and griffins and elves, and the squidicum squeeze that swallers themselves. And right by the pump in our pasture lot, he showed me the hole that the Wunks has got, that lives way down deep in the ground and can turn into me or 'Lizabeth Ann. Ain't he a funny old Raggedy Man? Raggedy, raggedy, raggedy man. The Raggedy Man, one time when he was making a little bow and orry for me, says, "When you're big like your pa is, ere you go to keep a fine store like his, and be a rich merchant, and wear fine clothes? Or what ere you go to be, goodness knows." And then he laughed at 'Lizabeth Ann, and I says, "Am go to be a Raggedy Man. I must go to be a nice Raggedy Man. Raggedy, raggedy, raggedy man." End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Dinkey-Bird by Eugene Field, from the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Part 1, Poems Old and New, read for LibriVox.org. In an ocean way out yonder, as all sapient people know, is the land of wonder wander, whither children love to go. It's their playing, romping, swinging that give great joy to me, while the Dinkey-Bird goes singing in the amphalula tree. In an ocean way out yonder, as all sapient people know, there the gumdrops grow like cherries, and taffies thick as peas. Caramels you pick like berries, when and where and how you please. Big red sugar plums are clinging to the cliffs beside that sea where the Dinkey-Bird is singing in the amphalula tree. So when children shout and scamper and make merry all the day, when there's naught to put a damper to the ardour of their play, when I hear their laughter ringing, then I'm sure as sure can be that the Dinkey-Bird is singing in the amphalula tree. For the Dinkey-Bird's bravoras and staccatos are so sweet, his roulades, appoggiaturas, and robustos so complete, that the youth of every nation, be they near or far away, have a special delectation in that gladsome roundelay. Their eyes grow bright and brighter, their lungs begin to crow, their hearts get light and lighter, and their cheeks are all aglow, for an echo cometh, bringing the news to all and me that the Dinkey-Bird is singing in the amphalula tree. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Hollyhock by Sarah J. Day. From the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Part 1. Poems Old and New. Read for LibriVox.org. The stately Lady Hollyhock has graced my garden bed for years, sedately stiffened in a frock all frills and ruffles to her ears, for at the fashions one may mock when one is born a hollyhock. Her gay companions creep and twine and riot in the summer breeze, but she doth haughtily decline to join in common sports like these. Such indecorum needs must shock a well-bred, well-starched hollyhock. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Pied Piper of Hamelin by Robert Browning. From the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Part 1. Poems Old and New. Read for LibriVox.org. Hamelin Town's in Brunswick, by famous Hanover City. The river Weisser, deep and wide, washes its wall on the southern side. A pleasanter spot you never spied. But when begins my ditty, almost 500 years ago, to see the townsfolk suffer so from vermin was a pity. Rats, they fought the dogs and killed the cats, and bit the babies in the cradles, and ate the cheeses out of the vats, and licked the soup from the cook's own ladles, spilt open the kegs of salted sprats, made nests inside men's Sunday hats, and even spoiled the women's chats by drowning their speaking with shrieking and squeaking in 50 different sharps and flats. At last the people in a body to the town hall came flocking. "'Tis clear," cried they, "our mayor's a noddy, and as for our corporation, shocking to think we buy gowns lined with ermine for dolts that can't or won't determine what's best to rid us of our vermin. You hope, because you're old and obese, to find in the furry civic robe ease? Rouse up, sirs, give your brains a racking to find the remedy you're lacking, or sure as fate will send you packing." At this the mayor and corporation quaked with a mighty consternation. An hour they sat in council. At length the mayor broke silence. "For a guilder I'd my ermine gown sell. I wish I were a mile hence. It's easy to bid one rack one's brains. I'm sure my poor head aches again. I've scratched it so, and all in vain. Oh, for a trap, a trap, a trap!" Just as he said this, what should hap at the chamber door but a gentle tap? "Bless us!" cried the mayor, "what's that?" With the corporation as he sat, looking little wondrous fat, nor brighter was his eye, nor moister than a too long opened oyster, save when at noon his paunch grew mutinous for a plate of turtle green and glutinous. Only a scraping of shoes on the mat? Anything like the sound of a rat makes my heart go pit-a-pat. "Come in," the mayor cried, looking bigger, and in did come the strangest figure. His queer long coat from heel to head was half of yellow and half of red, and he himself was tall and thin, with sharp blue eyes, each like a pin, and light loose hair, yet swarthy skin. No tuft on cheek, nor beard on chin, but lips where smiles went out and in. There was no guessing his kith and kin, and nobody could enough admire the tall man in his quaint attire. Quoth one, "It's as if my great-grandsire, starting up at the trump of doom's tone, had walked this way from his painted tombstone." He advanced to the council table, and, "Please your honours," said he, I'm able, by means of a secret charm, to draw all creatures living beneath the sun that creep or swim or fly or run after me, so as you never saw. And I chiefly use my charm on creatures that do people harm, the mole, the toad, the newt, the viper, and people call me the Pied Piper. And here they noticed round his neck a scarf of red and yellow stripe, to match his coat of the selfsame check. And at the scarf's end hung a pipe, and his fingers, they noticed, were ever straying, as if impatient to be playing upon his pipe, as low it dangled over his vesture so old-fangled. Yet, said he, poor piper as I am, in Tartary I freed the Cham last June from his huge swarm of gnats. I eased in Asia the Nizam of a monstrous brood of vampire bats. And as for what your brain bewilders, if I can rid your town of rats, will you give me 1,000 guilders? 50,000 was the exclamation of the astonished mayor and corporation. In the street the piper stepped, smiling first a little smile, as if he knew what magic slept in his quiet pipe the while. Then, like a musical adept, to blow the pipe his lips he wrinkled, and blue and green his sharp eyes twinkled, like a candle flame where salt is sprinkled. And ere 3 shrill notes the pipe had uttered, you heard as if an army muttered, and the muttering grew to a grumbling, and the grumbling grew to a mighty rumbling, and out of the houses the rats came tumbling, great rats, small rats, lean rats, brawny rats, brown rats, black rats, grey rats, tawny rats, grave old plodders, gay young friskers, fathers, mothers, uncles, cousins, cocking tails and pricking whiskers. Families by tens and dozens, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, followed the piper for their lives. From street to street he piped, advancing, and step for step they followed, dancing, until they came to the river Weser, wherein all plunged and perished, save one, who stood as Julius Caesar, swam across and lived to carry, as he the manuscript he cherished, to Ratland home his commentary, which was at the first shrill notes of the pipe. I heard a sound as of scraping tripe, and putting apples wondrous ripe into a cider press's gripe, and moving away a pickle tub boards, and a leaving a jar of concert cupboards, and a drawing the corks of train oil flasks, and a breaking the hoops of butter casks. It seemed as if a voice, sweeter far than by harp or by psaltery is breathed, cried out, O rats, rejoice! The world is grown to one vast dry saltery. So munch on, crunch on, take your nuncheon, breakfast, supper, dinner, luncheon, and just as a bulky sugar puncheon, already staved, like a great sun shone, glorious, scarce an inch before me, just as methought it said, Come, bore me, I found the Weser rolling o'er me. You should have heard the Hamelin people ringing the bells till they rocked the steeple. Go, cried the mayor, and get long poles, poke out the nests and block up the holes, consult with carpenters and builders, and leave in our town not even a trace of the rats, when suddenly up the face of the piper perked in the marketplace, with a first, if you please, my 1,000 guilders. 1,000 guilders! The mayor looked blue, so did the corporation too, for council dinners made rare havoc, with claret, moselle, vin de grave, hock, and half the money would replenish their cellar's biggest butt with Rhenish. To pay the sum to a wandering fellow, with a gypsy coat of red and yellow. Beside, quoth the mayor, with a knowing wink, our business was done at the river's brink. We saw with our eyes the vermin sink, and what's dead cannot come to life, I think. So, friend, we're not the folks to shrink from the duty of giving you something to drink, and as a matter of money to put in your poke. But as for the guilders, what we spoke of them, as you very well know, was in joke. Beside, our losses have made us thrifty. 1,000 guilders. Come, take 50. The piper's face fell, and he cried, No trifling, I can't wait. Beside, I promised to visit by dinner time Baghdad, and accept the prime of the head cook's pottage, all he's rich in, for having left in the caliph's kitchen of a nest of scorpions no survivor. With him I proved no bargain driver. With you don't think I'll bait a stiver, and folks who put me in a passion may find me pipe after another fashion. How, cried the mayor, do you think I'd brook being worse treated than a cook, insulted by a lazy ribald with idle pipe and vesture piebald? You threaten us, fellow? Do your worst, blow your pipe there till you burst. Once more he stepped into the street, and to his lips again laid his long pipe of smooth straight cane, and airy blew 3 notes, such sweet soft notes as yet musicians cunning never gave the enraptured air. There was a rustling that seemed like a bustling of merry crowds justling and pitching and hustling. Small feet were pattering, wooden shoes clattering, little hands clapping, and little tongues chattering. And like fowls in a farmyard when barley is scattering, out came the children running, and all the little boys and girls with rosy cheeks and flaxen curls, and sparkling eyes and teeth like pearls, tripping and skipping, ran merrily after the wonderful music with shouting and laughter. The mayor was dumb, and the council stood as if they were changed into blocks of wood, unable to move a step or cry to the children merrily skipping by, could only follow with the eye that joyous crowd at the piper's back. And now the mayor was on the rack, and the wretched council's bosoms beat as the piper turned from the high street to where the Weser rolled its waters, right in the way of their sons and daughters. However, they turned from south to west, and to Koppelberg Hill his steps addressed, and after him the children pressed. Great was the joy in every breast. He never can cross that mighty top, he's forced to let the piping drop, and we shall see our children stop. When lo, as they reached the mountainside, a wondrous portal opened wide, as if a cavern was suddenly hollowed, and the piper advanced, and the children followed, and when all were in, to the very last, the door in the mountainside shut fast. Did I say all? No, one was lame, and could not dance the whole of the way, and in after years, if you would blame his sadness, he was used to say, "It's dull in our town since my playmates left. I can't forget that I'm bereft of all the pleasant sights they see, which the piper also promised me. For he led us," he said, "to a joyous land, joining the town, and just at hand, where waters gushed, and fruit trees grew, and flowers put forth a fairer hue, and everything was strange and new. The sparrows were brighter than peacocks there, and their dogs outran our fallow deer, and honeybees had lost their sting, and horses were born with eagle's wings. And just as I became assured my lame foot would be speedily cured, the music stopped, and I stood still, and found myself outside the hill, left alone against my will, to go now limping as before, and never hear of that country more. Alas, alas, for Hamelin! There came into many a burgher's pate a text which says that heaven's gate opes to the rich at as easy rate as the needle's eye takes a camel in. The mayor sent east, west, north, and south to offer the piper by word of mouth whatever it was man's lot to find him, silver and gold to his heart's content, if he'd only return the way he went, and bring the children behind him. And when they saw 'twas a lost endeavor, and piper and dances were gone forever, they made a decree that lawyers never should think their records dated duly, if after the day of the month and the year these words did not as well appear. And so long after what happened here, on the 22nd of 1376, in the better in memory to fix in place of the children's last retreat, they called it the Pied Piper's Street, where anyone playing on pipe or tabor was sure for the future to lose his labor, nor suffered they hostelry or tavern to shock with mirth a street so solemn. But opposite the place of the cavern they wrote the story on a column, and on the great church window painted the same, to make the world acquainted how their children were stolen away. And there it stands to this very day. And I must not omit to say that in Transylvania there's a tribe of alien people who ascribe the outlandish ways and dress on which their neighbors lay such stress to their fathers and mothers having risen out of some subterraneous prison, into which they were trepanned long ago in a mighty band out of Hamelin town in Brunswick land, but how or why they don't understand. So will he let you and me be wipers of scores out of all men, especially pipers, and whether they pipe us free from rats or from mice, if we promise them aught, let us keep our promise. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Waiting Around by Burgess Johnson, from the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Part 1, Poems Old and New, read for LibriVox.org. It was awful long ago that I put those seeds around, and I guess I ought to know when I stuck 'em in the ground, 'cause I noted down the day in a little diary book. It's gotten lost at somewheres, and I don't know where to look. But I'm certain, anyhow, they've been planted most a week, and it must be time by now for their little sprouts to peak. They've been watered every day with a very special care, and once or twice I've dug 'em up to see if they was there. I fixed the dirt and humps just the way they said I should, and I crumpled all the lumps just as fondly as I could. And I found an angleworm a-poking up his head, and he maybe feeds on seeds and such, and so I squashed him dead. A seed so very small, and dirt all looks the same, how can they know at all the way they ought to aim? And so I'm waiting round, in case of any need. A farmer ought to do his best for every single seed. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Wishing by William Allingham, from the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Part 1. Poems Old and New, read for LibriVox.org. Ring-ting, I wish I were a primrose, a bright yellow primrose, blowing in the spring. The stooping boughs above me, the wandering bee to love me, the fern and moss to creep across, and the elm tree for our king. Nay, stay, I wish I were an elm tree, a great lofty elm tree with green leaves gay. The winds would set them dancing, the sun and moonshine glance in, the birds would house among the boughs and sweetly sing. Oh no, I wish I were a robin or a little wren, everywhere to go, through forest, field, or garden, and ask no leave or pardon, till winter comes with icy thumbs to ruffle up our wing. Well, tell, where should I fly to, where go to sleep in the dark wood or dell? Before a day was over, home comes the rover, for mother's kiss, sweeter this than any other thing. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. End of the Junior Classics, Volume 10, Part 1. Poems Old and New, compiled by William Patten.